Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another episode of Endurance Chat. I'm Michael Zalavari, and joining me tonight, I have a good friend from America, Austin Zetzman. Good morning, Austin. Bright and early morning for you today.
Yeah, good happy morning there, Mike. How's it going?
It is pretty swell. It's late on a Monday night, a public holiday, and I've got work tomorrow after my holidays, so I'm straight up not looking forward to it.
No, that's, yeah, but hey, it's an extra day off, so that's how you gotta look at it.
This is true. No, it's been good. It's been good. How has it been over in the America lands? This is just our little catch up, by the way. I don't know why you guys are listening to us.
Yeah, it's good. Family's doing well. Bobby's getting older. No, I don't know why I'm doing the old family thing. No, it's getting warmer. So definitely in Florida, we can feel the warmth as essentially we don't go outside for the next 4 months. So,
I'm so jelly.
Turn the AC on and watching lots of sports car racing on the weekends.
And lots of sports car racing, right? We've already had the first round of the ELMS last week, which we'll talk about in depth today. Also, while we're starting this, literally the second session of the WEC Prologue is happening right now. So we'll talk a bit about this weekend's race at Spa-Francorchamps, what's happening in the Prologue while we're talking about it. But yeah, there's plenty going on at the moment. It's great. Sports car racing is back. Oh, I'm so excited.
Hug me, please.
I'm trying, but there's just quite literally the entire diameter of the Earth between us.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's easier to go through the center.
Yeah.
We had Barcelona happening, and then we got this Prologue thing going on here at Spa for WEC. So, and that's happening in a week as well.
Yeah, it's all happening down here at the. No, I'm not going to say that. What I will say though, before we crack into it, is thank you very much to our sponsor, the RacingLine.app, your motorsport calendar. They will keep you abreast of all the time changes that have been happening because daylight savings is happening around the world, and I hate it. And I hate it so much. But with the Racing Line app, it's made it easier. So thank you to them, and thank you for sponsoring us. And let's crack into it. ELMS, right? It was last weekend at Barcelona. How did you think it went?
I thought it went as good as a large field of ELMS cars could possibly go. I know there's this looming cloud of let's just say equalization, BOP, that kind of stuff to get in line with the WC and the LMH addition to the WC calendar or just grid, and so that ripple effect will eventually hit ELMS, and I know that beforehand, at least post the Barcelona ELMS race weekend, that there's been some changes to that
already.
Yeah, but that we weren't supposed to see those changes anyway at ELMS, so it felt pretty dang standard of an affair of a race, even though I think that it was a pretty dang good race.
Yeah.
All the classes seem to have their moments in the sunshine, as it were, throughout the 4 hours. And I actually don't mind Barcelona as an endurance track. I really don't like it as a sprint track for like Formula One and stuff. But this one proved to be pretty good, and I liked kind of the different kind of configuration because I think they used more of the MotoGP circuit kind of thing in the back of the course.
Yeah, they completely changed. I think it's turn 11, so now it's not an awful like more than 90-degree left-hander. It's like the nice swooping open left-hander, which is great.
Yep. And so yeah, there's a lot of different kind of cool things that I enjoy just from not having that. Actually, they did use the chicane. What am I talking about?
Yeah, they did use
the final chicane.
Yeah.
I think Mitchell and Maucup didn't use it. There was one of them that did not actually use the chicane that I was watching that weekend, and I was like, wow, I'm kind of impressed they didn't do that. But anyway, specifically with ELMS, I thought the LMP2 battle was very awesome. I mean, could we have seen more battles? Sure. But at the same time, I mean, you had strategy that worked into it as well. But then you also saw challenges to some of the main ELMS stalwarts in like G Drive and United Autosports. So that was good too. It was kind of refreshing to see a little bit more battles with it, but kind of not to be unexpected with WRT stepping up.
So I guess we'll start there. The status quo in ELMS in the LMP2 category has been shaken to its core because it turns out we're actually not too bad at this prediction thing. Both Ollie and I said WRT were going to be the guys to beat, and they won. It's great. We're good at this now. They really kind of took everything away from the rest of the field. The fact that you've got your AM driver is Yifei Ye, who's basically he's being managed by Patrick Pilet, so he's a future professional, definitely, and he just throughout the middle of the race just run rings around the field, and by the time they put Kubica in to finish the race, they had effectively a 40-second lead, and Kubica just managed that to the end, and they were untouchable. Delatraz did a great stint at the start, by the way, to actually take the lead. And Cookie, is this a sign of things to come? Is this the new normal in LMP2?
It could definitely be if they continue having trouble-free races and Kubica can continue to perform at, I would say, a high level. Specifically because I don't know if he's raced LMP2 before or he's had much running of it, and to be at the sharp end of the field and to take over what was a pretty big lead from the other two drivers and kind of cruise it home was a big step for him, I think, if anything. I don't know if this fully continues, but I would say that they have a good shot to win the championship easily. I mean, I think even before this first round, we would have said, yeah, they're definitely championship contenders for this year. And this, the first round definitely proved that. So interesting to see the podium too, with Panis Racing in second and the United Autosports as well. So you kind of do have that juxtaposition with the first and third being these dominating or at least predictable teams, and then you have Panis Racing sneaking in there. With arguably a good lineup themselves.
I just want to say that I absolutely called that, and I said that they'd be on the podium, and I was right, and I'm not letting anyone tell me otherwise.
Okay. Oh, yep. Just
Great.
Beat that drum.
Absolutely. You gotta be your own biggest fan, Cookie. Someone has to.
So, can I ask you?
Yep.
There was 4 cars technically on the leading lap of the 41 team WRT. Did you see that happening? Because the field spread themselves out quite a bit in terms of the LMP2 field. They definitely had a lot of laps between cars. And then also the Ligiers. Oh, sorry. No, sorry.
I was going to say, there were Ligiers?
I was like, yeah, that's what I was saying. I was like, oh man, there's Ligiers at the bottom. I'm like, wait a sec. Hold on. I'm looking at this wrong because they have it labeled slightly weird. So, yeah. But the Oreca field continues.
Yes. So let's look at those 4 cars on the lead lap, because you made mention of them. WRT, we've talked about. Panis Racing, an incredible run from them. I got to say, I was impressed, but not surprised, which is a good sign. And then United Autosports and G-Drive. Now, let's talk about G-Drive first. The number 26 car, they had, what was it? A spin at early on in the race. So hang on. So firstly, there was an investigation into their starting procedure because they were saying that Rusnov went too slow. Then he got passed. Then he had a spin. Then Colapinto had a spin. Then he got pinged for a pit lane infringement. Then they hit the team car's wheel in the pit lane. No, the team car hit their wheel in the pit lane, so the team got pinged again. And then Colapinto got punished for Rusinov's start infringement. And then Colapinto had another spin, and yet they still finished in 4th position. I think that they've had the worst race I've seen from a contender while still managing to end up in the top 5.
Yeah, it was almost like what could go wrong did go wrong, and kind of shades a little bit of their start to Asian Mod Series, if I remember correctly.
With the car that had the oil leak the entire race.
Yeah, where they were like getting all of their bad karma out early, which... I mean, I feel like they got a lot more karma to get out. But at the same time, to finish still on the lead lap with all that stuff and still technically take 4th is that's a pretty impressive result, even though it's not podium for them.
Yeah, well, I'll just put the question to you. Can you ever remember a worse outing from a favorite for the race, for the category in any motorsports? When was the last time a favorite for the race had that bad a run?
Would we want to have classified Roman Rusinov's like hour 3 or hour 4
at Le Mans
into the GTM at Le Mans?
Oh, somehow when I asked that question, that's immediately where my mind went, and you just read my mind.
Yeah, that could be it.
Yeah,
my mind immediately goes to G-Drive. Like, what have they done in the past? What can I slap on that now? But yeah, I would say that.
We've got Ollie saying in the chat, Toyota 2016. No, they ran the perfect Le Mans and it all fell apart in one fell swoop. That's not what I mean here. I mean, when has a team had just pardon me, everything go wrong in a race. Because I like, besides that G drive, that one instance where they threw it away super duper early, or Rusnov threw it away super duper early. I can't remember a team, a championship leading team. I'm thinking back like the ELMS finale in 2015 or 16, where all of the championship leaders just fell apart. I think it was Thierry by TDS and Jodo Sport and Dragon Speed all had problems in the last race.
Yeah, that might be it too. Where there's but that was just multiple cars. This one, they felt like all those cars back then combined into one car. That was this one.
Yeah, it felt a bit like that. It still came away with a fourth, which is pretty incredible. And like, I look at that lineup still: Rusinov, Colapinto, and De Vries, and I'm still scared of it. So, hold me, please. Yes. There needs to be some hand holding at least with some of these teams.
What
about United? They came third with the Hanson Aberdeen Tom Gamble car, the 22 car. Now, I've got to say, I was really impressed by Gamble specifically. That move there, he read like around the outside of turn 11 with the G drive car, I think it was. That was some cool stuff. So they found something pretty cool in Gamble, but United kind of threw it away in the first corner, didn't they? With the other car.
Yeah, I mean, and then at the same time they slowed up the 20. Rusinov, I think, slowed the entire field up.
Yeah.
When before going to green, which you could do that on a Formula One restart, bud. But this is a little tough to do, and it's like heading to the green. Like, the 26 did not help themselves out in terms of the championship or hearts and minds of the people here on the first round. That's for sure. But yeah, oh man, the contact too was not. You don't do that with teammate cars. Maybe you're not supposed to do it at all in endurance racing. That's like the last thing you do. But apparently, if you're in IMSA, that's what you do.
Oh yeah, obviously.
Yeah, Corvette fans still bent up about BMW.
But, I mean, Porsche fans also bent up about BMW as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of BMW hate going around, and it's kind of warranted. So,
and it's entirely deserved. Yeah. Anyway, absolutely. United.
Yes, United. I feel like they bore the brunt of some kind of that's the way it goes kind of luck sometimes with the racetrack today.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's a really good lineup, and they can overcome it. It's just I feel like Panis drove as good as I think some people were expecting them to, even though that lineup is great. And Team WR2 just had as perfect of an opening round as you possibly can in terms of their 4-hour race. So
yeah,
I mean, like they struggled a bit, the 22, but I don't know. I think it was all right for them.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it's a good start for the podium.
Yeah, exactly. And remember, this is Phil Hansen's first race as a gold driver. He's got with him Tom Gamble, who's stepping up from the LMP3 field, and Aberdeen, who I'm still not super familiar with. So that's a pretty fresh-faced looking car in the 22. I was just very, very disappointed for Nicolo Jamin in the other car. The fact that on the first corner of the race you've made a mistake and gone down a lap or two, you just spend the rest of the race chasing your tail, and that's exactly what they did. They only just managed to scrape into the top 10 at the end of it, and it was a unassuming start for that car. And we were saying, Ollie and I were saying, that car would be one of the top 5 quite easily. So
yeah, and then I think they lost another lap at some point too, either with they have a longer pit stop or something. I'm not sure, but they ended up going. Yeah, their final was 2 laps down.
Yeah,
and yeah, that was a really. I mean, I don't want to say it was a clumsy error, but it was definitely like the first lap, tires are cold, and making that error specifically in turn 2, where it's like you don't have any way to escape it, and then beaching it really is, it's unfortunate for them. But hey, that's the way it goes, especially, and it just proves the point that you have to. Even in these 4-hour races, like you can't make those kind of mistakes where you're ending up a lap down that early, because it's just not recoverable. And maybe with a add 20 hours to it with one of those kind of races, you've got an option to make that up. But I think this really proves that it's even 4 hours is really almost considered a sprint format, and you've got to hit your marks, whether that is the second turn of the first lap or the second turn of the last lap kind of deal. So
absolutely, and to go on from your point that maybe with another 20 hours added on, you could make that up. I honestly don't think you can. Not with the way that the LMP2 class is now. It is just that competitive and that professional for a Pro-Am class. It is incredibly professional. And even if you look to say Le Mans last year, where you had Alpine and Racing Team Nederland and United Autosports, their second car, suffering problems. The Alpine and the Racing Team Nederland cars suffered problems on the first lap, effectively, or in the first 5 minutes. And they were not in the hunt throughout the entire race. Like, I think the Alpine ended up finishing 6th or 7th or 5th or something. So there is no room for error anymore in LMP2. It feels like a GT World Challenge grid at the moment.
Well, right, yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking as well, especially the amount of entrants that they had.
Yeah, and sorry to just jump in over the top of you. And to me, it's surprising that a team like United, with their skills and resources and drivers, made that sort of mistake. I know it was a driver on their first lap, but this isn't Ginetta we're talking about here, where they've got everyone's flying by the seat of the pants, including their brand new young professional. Like this is meant to be the best of LMP2. Certainly, it's been the best of LMP2 for the last 2 seasons.
Yes, and really, yeah, and they've kind of set their own standard with that, and that's why it's a little bit odd to see them in that position where, we've kind of seen other teams make these kind of mistakes and then be punished for it by United Autosports, basically having these kind of days, or having their own kind of days where they're, essentially almost locking up the podium. And really, we have that initial error on the first round of the first lap of the new season is, it's very un-United Autosports like.
Absolutely. Another team who had a very un-team-like performance was Dragon Speed, who survived a grand total of 5 laps before retiring, very unassumedly. 7 laps they ended up getting. I think Hedman got spun on the first lap at the chicane and ended up, I think, beaching the car on the curb or getting stuck on the curb somewhat. So that was the reason for the early safety car. And then after getting back out on track 2 or 3 laps later, made contact with an LMP3 car, found his way into the gravel at turn 6 or 7, and retired the car after 7 laps. So a big bad time for Dragon Speed. Certainly not the way that they would have liked to start their season either.
Yeah. Dragon Speed definitely would want a rewrite of the last, just from 2021 so far. Burned out clutch, I think, too, with what they eventually retired with. But it's not fun.
Yeah, and that was confirmed by one of the team members in our Discord server. So thank you for that information. We're getting all the hot scoops now. Look at us. We're like a real group.
Well, almost real group,
This is It was almost like remember I think it was at the end of last year where the Reddit Formula 1 Twitter page broke some news, which was ridiculous. Something about a team, like a driver leaving a team or something. And
and it was it was like an exclusive thing. Like there was no other top. I don't know if it was a rumor. Did people call him out for saying it was a rumor or something, or did they make it specifically official that they were doing it?
They were we are officially announcing this. Oh, some Twilight Zone stuff. That's what it feels like for us at the moment.
Hey, we just stand back and watch. That's all.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Give me the info.
Bit of a rough run for what was it, Ricky Taylor, who had come all the way from the US and not managed to turn a lap in anger in that car before it was retired. Yeah. Hopefully Gustavo Menezes has a little bit more luck for that car's next round.
Yeah, that's a one-off for Ricky, I think, right, so far?
Yeah, they're basically, it's the sort of the star in the car sort of deal. So the idea is each time the Dragon Speed car goes out, it'll have a different American third driver, I think.
Hey, yeah, and hey, Menezes is pretty dang quick as well. So they should hopefully have a solid anchor if they could ever get to it.
Absolutely. Let's have a look at some of the other notable performances through the field. And the first one I want to sort of arrow in on is Ultimate. We Ollie and I, when we did our preview, kind of gave them no chance, but they came away not only 5th place overall, but the Pro-Am winners. That was a shot out of the dark, wasn't it? Did you have any expectations of Ultimate being that far up the grid?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, just looking at some of them, Pro-Ams didn't, and really, we shouldn't always think about it like this, but, the Pro-Ams should, in theory, be most of the way down the field when it comes to the LMP2 field. And we had a couple Pro-Ams that were sneaking, were a little sneaky into the top 10. 3 Pro-Ams in the top 10 for overall standings that are LMP2, as we'll just keep saying.
Yeah.
So that was actually a better result than I thought was going to happen for just the field of Pro-Ams. But yeah, I was definitely surprised with the pace of the 29 and how good it was actually competing against. And basically, I think it was P5. It was the first car 1 lap down. So I mean, it wasn't like they were, they were not on the WRT pace, but they were absolutely doing. They weren't running into mistakes and fouling up and that and whatnot. So great opening round for them, absolutely.
Yeah, and not only did they finish 5th, but they finished in front of some pretty commendable teams. So, the team immediately behind them was the Duquesne engineering team of Gomendy, Binder, and Rojas. Sure, remember, that car has won a race in LMP2 in the ELMS before getting that stripped away from them in the Red Bull Ring. That made me really, really sad. But also, the second G-Drive racing car they finished ahead of. IDEX Sport, 2019 Series champions they finished ahead of. The other United Autosports car, sure, they had a mistake, whatever. Cool Racing, Nicolas Lapierre, that was the car that we were really pulling for as the best Pro-Am car, and they just smashed them. It was they had an entire lap on Cool Racing.
Yep. Yeah, and that was the other point I was going to make too, is just because they finished so high in the LMP2 field, just overall, they had to beat a lot of different LMP2 cars that were not Pro-Am. And that was really the surprising thing, too.
Absolutely. Alex is making the point in the chat, Alex21, thank you for joining us in the live chat, that they won a lot of LMP3 races, which is absolutely true. The Ultimate team have been one of the forces in the LMP3 category, not last season, but the season prior. So their silvers are actually quite good, but their silvers are not on the scale of Memo Rojas, Rui Andrade, Patrick Pile, for example, Job Van Oytert. That's the fact that they've managed to find their way into that position is an absolutely commendable debut in the LMP2 class for them. So I hope they kick on. I hope they kick on and do some cool stuff, because that was a surprise to me.
Yeah, I think so too. If I would have been able to pick something, it would either been between G-Drive or Cool Racing for Pro-Am.
Yeah.
But yeah, they managed to prove a lot of people wrong. I don't think a lot of people were expecting them to take the top step for LMP2 Pro-Am.
Yep, and just to drive that point home as well, Cookie, those were the next 2 Pro-Am cars, finishing 7th and 10th overall, the G-Drive 25 car and the Cool Racing number 37 car. What about the rest of the LMP2 field? Any other results particularly striking for you? Anything that jumps out at all?
No, you mentioned Duquesne. I expected a little bit more from them. I think they had an issue, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember specifically at the top of my head. Number 6 over 30 Duquesne team. Yes, technically that lineup isn't that doesn't just bam pop out to me, but they've proven themselves to be mighty quick with that chassis, being an LMP3 manufacturer and all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I expected them to be a little bit higher up, even though 6th place isn't bad. So that was really the only other standout thing that I had. Otherwise, yeah, this was a pretty solid LMP2 race, and it had a decent amount of talking points for kind of how much Team WRT whomped the field.
They whomped the field. They were, at one point 40 seconds ahead of the field. A question for you, Cookie. When was the last time a LMP2 team won on debut? Can you think anything that pops off at the top of your head?
I know Duquesne did really well, but I don't think they won on their opening race. I'll
pose that one to the group. The only thing that I can think of, and we do have an answer in the live chat, Ollie, well done. Last year, 2019, I believe, the Racing Engineering Group, anchored by Norman Nato, won the first round. I believe that would have been at Monza, wouldn't it? Oh, Paul Ricard. Yep, there you go. Awesome. Other acceptable answers would have been SMP, but they technically weren't a debut on the LMP2. It was the debut of the LMP2 Dallara for them.
Yep.
And I would have also accepted Cool Racing in the WEC. They won their debut race. Admittedly, because their bronze was injured, but they still won it. There you go. Nice little challenge for everyone. LMP3. We'll talk about LMP3 next. LMP3, again, I say this every single time, flew under the radar for me because it's just so hard to track where the pit stops are. But I was pretty impressed by Lawrence Hoare in the DKR engineering car, even though the other driver in that car had nowhere near the same capabilities as Lawrence Hoare did. So, I reckon Lawrence Hoare will get my driver of the race. In the end, the DKR engineering car finished, I think that's 3rd or 4th in class. But really, it was a cool racing show. Again, they didn't have all their own way at the end, but it looked pretty comfortable.
Yeah, and I think Cool Racing is, I don't think they've won an LMP3 before. This would be their first win, correct?
I think so. In ELMS, I'm fairly sure they've had success in MLMC before.
Yeah. This would be ELMS first round one.
Yeah.
Stellar effort from them specifically. But yeah, I've been really enjoying the LMP3 category. Just from an aspect of that, you never, unless you're paying super hard attention to who's driving, you don't really know, kind of, even sometimes when they're getting overtake, how it's going to go when shake out a little bit with that. And yeah. I don't know, I'm a fan of the new cars, and it clearly seems like the Ligier is probably going to be the gold standard again when it comes to the new LMP3 spec. But yeah, LMP3 has settled very quickly into ELMS as being part of the package of why ELMS is so good, and yeah, it still can prove to have some spectacular incidents as well. Thinking about the Michelin Pilot Sport. Oh man, oh no! Oh man!
Wow, this is how you know it's properly early in the morning for Cookie.
Man, I messed that one up. But yeah, the support series race earlier the weekend too had some pretty spectacular accidents. So I feel like that class really gave us a whole breadth of its capabilities there. So
it is really the modern prototype challenge in the best way possible in the ELMS, not so much in the Michelin Le Mans Cup. Yeah. So something that really struck me as interesting watching the LMP3 race was that the gaps fluctuated massively. So as I made mention, Lawrence Hoare, he pulled himself out to a 20-30 second gap in the first part of the race. In the Duquesne, by the way. So that shows that the Duquesne has some serious pace behind it. And we saw him do a similar thing in the Asian Le Mans series as well earlier in the year rather. But because of the 2 mandated minimum pit stop times, not 3 like we saw in the Asian Le Mans series, which means that each team has basically a joker pit stop which they can take, which really throws the cat amongst the pigeons. And the bronze driver that he's driving with could do with another few years of experience. That car dropped away at the end. On the other hand, it was the Cool Racing car who had the gap in the middle part of the race, and then that gap came down massively. In the end, the gap for the win was only 2 seconds in LMP3.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, what makes it a little hard to track. That joker pit stop in combination with the wide spread of driver talent makes those battles really hard to keep on top of.
I forgot about that second pit stop, which that would definitely make it so that you have to, you could be punished if you're not doing that correctly. And yeah, I totally forgot about the DKR, where they were only doing a 2-man squad kind of race, and yeah, they were leading early and then had a pace fall off by one of them. So yeah, definitely with those two, I think factors, that was definitely something that I wasn't even paying attention to early on. I was looking a lot at LMP2 and then at the GTE field, but yeah, I might have to take that back. But hey, the Ligiers are just pumping them out though.
Yeah,
only one Duquesne there.
And Ollie has gone into why that's the case plenty of times in the podcast, so we won't rehash it. The TLDR is Duquesne buying Norma didn't get any of Norma's intelligence, so they're basically running it blind, which is fine. But it's good to see that there is actually pace in that Duquesne. Lawrence Hoare, in fact, had the fastest lap of the race as well. So there is pace in that machine. They just got to find some drivers to extract it more consistently. The other race results in the LMP3 category: Cool Racing won. Great job by Matt Bell to hold off Malte Jacobsen in the RLR M Sport machine for the last part of the race. They finished second. Into Europol, the old empire of LMP3 finished third, with Martin Hipper and his co-drivers, who I cannot remember the name of at the moment, De Wilde and Falchero, it seems to be. A1 Valor Bacorsa finished fourth, which is a pretty good result. We were singing their praises from the Asian Le Mans series, so good to see them up in fourth. DCAR Engineering dropped down to fifth. Then it was I'm surprised to see Nielsen Racing and Team Virage so far down, actually. Specifically the Anthony Wells and Colin Noble team. I'm not sure if they ran into problems or something, but they finished behind the leading GTE car, which is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, suffering was some just a little bit of pace. They were one lap down, I think, too. So,
yeah,
or two laps down. I'm sorry, but yeah, and then the three as well. I mean, that lineup was a little bit to be considered as well, but still see them struggle a little bit down there. The LP3 field was a little bit of a surprise as well. And again, yeah, some of these are finishing behind the class-winning GTE car. So that was a little bit interesting as well to see that. Usually there's some pace separation between them, but that might just also prove how good Iron Lynx was.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna say this now, and I'm gonna fight for this the entire time we talk about the GTE class in the European Le Mans series. Okay. GT Pro factory drivers in the GT class in ELMS is just a cheat code. Like that's not fair. Miguel Molina in that car is just not fair. There shouldn't be a GTE car that is lapping the field, regardless of how long an ELMS race is. In an ELMS race, that shouldn't happen.
I mean, it was a true full lap.
It was a full lap.
The 488 had over the rest of the 488s and Porsches. Yeah, that was it was a stand up and applause kind of deal. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. And I wonder if that is a trickle down effect to the rest of the grid. All of a sudden, you start seeing WC Pro drivers start stepping to these a lot more of these GTE cars. But yeah, I was completely surprised at the pace of that 80 car, and then to see it, with that class separation too. It had some LMP3s in between it and the next GTE car was astounding. Also, though, giving them their first win in ELMS as well. So
I think so, yeah. Team. Well, I mean, when you go from who was driving in that car before, so that's an Iron Lynx car. It used to be the number 60 car. So when you go from Paolo Roberti, who's all right, to friggin' Miguel Molina, platinum rated GTE Pro AF Corsa factory driver, that's
yeah, you're stepping it up.
just a lot.
A minimal upgrade.
Yeah, so that happened. That's how the GTE race basically went, and that's how it basically went. That was the story, really. Iron Lynx, the number 80 car, just Matteo Crissoni, Rino Mastronardi, and Miguel Molina, just quite literally a lap plus. What is that? 20 seconds on the next car. It was ludicrous, but the battle for the minors was pretty enthralling, and there was at one point on track where there was second down to sixth in its own train at one stage with about an hour left, and it was pretty cool stuff. That was my highlight of the GTA race.
Yeah, and the at the end too with Proton competition trying to fend off Spirit of Race too. That was a really close one, kind of just coming down for the second step of the podium. It spaced itself out a little bit at the end, but yeah, I was loving GTE for most of the race too. It was fun, especially that train, because it just seems like somebody's eventually going to get the pass completed. And as they kept backing more of them up, it was just kind of like, all right, something's going to give here, something's going to give. So I think it might have been a pit stop or something like that, split them up. But it was a great GTE race. And I'm gonna take the opportunity now to just enjoy as much GTE racing as I can because we don't know the potential future of it. Even though I think we'll still have GTE for a few more years at least, but we'll see. So when I see at least an interesting GTE race, especially with how Iron Lynx was just slapping the field silly, I'm going to try to enjoy it. So
yeah.
thank you.
Exactly, and I think the difference in tire strategy in the middle there really backed things up. I think Jimmy Bruni at one stage was getting overtaken by the Iron Dames, which, I mean, all respect to the Iron Dames, none of the drivers in that car should be able to pass Jimmy Bruni. And like I say that with full respect. It's just that was the way that the tire strategy had gone at that point. So it was pretty interesting. In the end, it was the number 77 Proton car of Christian Reed, Jackson Evans, and Jimmy Bruni finishing in second ahead of the Spirit of Race car, as you mentioned. Dane Cameron, Matt Griffin, and David Perel in that car. No Adam Scott, who normally would be in that car. Iron Dane's finishing from fourth, which is pretty cool.
And then also, I forgot on my notes here, Michael Fassbender spun in that Proton Porsche.
Yes.
As well, little initiation of fire, however you want to say it, baptism of fire. That's it. Yes. That's the word.
It's been a year-long baptism of fire. I think he's had a bit enough of being in the fire at the moment. How did we rate Fassbender's run? Was it an improvement on what we saw last year?
I mean, just with more time in the car, improvement. But I mean, I've yet to really see him stand out yet.
Yeah,
and I think he's got it. I think he definitely has it in him. And from watching all those weird short documentaries, I don't know. It's tough to tell because they're definitely just trying to milk it up a bit. But he seems like a character who should be able to figure it out. And at least be able to not have those noteworthy things on track that are not necessarily positive. But no, I think between this year and last year, the pace hasn't improved, and I was going to say consistency has improved outside of the the obvious spin, but it's a learning curve, and it's going to take some time too for him to get used to it, because ultimately he's gonna show up at Le Mans, and there you have again some time to make that up, but you really can't be having contact and spinning at any time to really want a good result, which is what he's wanting.
Absolutely.
I think probably another year or so, and I think the pace will be there for him.
Cool. Fingers crossed. I'd like to see that happen, because more eyes on this sport is always a good thing. Yeah, it wasn't really a notable race, which is actually kind of a good thing besides that one spin. But everyone can have a spin. Nicolas Germain had a spin at the first corner, so
that's true. That is true.
Last little note I wanted to touch on, the Association SRT41 car. They got to the finish. They ended up finishing a lap down on most of the the GTE field runners, but that's an encouraging sign on their journey towards Le Mans as well for the innovative car.
Very good for them to get to the end of the race. I actually did like their livery on this one.
Yeah.
And if you spied it a bit, they even had like the handicap with the race car helmet. They had the handicap symbol like right under the P2. That was super great. I really like that. And honestly, I don't think they bailed on Le Mans a couple of years ago doing this.
They were going to do it last year, but they decided that without the proper lead up and without everything, and with everything that was going on, that they'd rather take another year and do it in a bit more controlled manner, which is good. They made that decision on the basis of being a team with vulnerable team members, which is entirely what the point is.
No, I thought it was really good. And then for them to have kind of like an issue-free race, as it were, was exactly what they needed. And this gets them just track experience, and obviously for pit stops, where there's a lot more going on with that than with any other team, really. And how complicated that has to be, just so that they're not taking 5 minutes. And they're cutting down literally minutes off of how quickly you can literally do driver changes. I thought that was great. And I wish we had more stuff like that in ELMS or Asia Le Mans Series and WEC even too, where you're kind of going, we have racing, but then we also have the ability for us to kind of like exercise just kind of good human spirit, human story races, that kind of thing. And to see, and like I said, just to see them not have a lot of issues, I thought was a great step moving forward for them.
Yeah.
So we'll hopefully see them. Are they going to another ELMS round?
Yes, they will do the next round of the ELMS, which will be, I don't know off the top of my head. I think it might be Red Bull Ring. But they're basically doing all the pre-Le Mans ELMS races, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And their team photo was super cool, too, because they had all of them kind of in front of the car.
Yeah.
Like, the wheelchairs and stuff. I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, it was really, really, really nicely and tastefully done.
Mm-hmm.
Driver of the race for you, Cookie. Who do you reckon it was the best drive of the race in your eyes?
I mean, Laurent Hoare in the DCAR engineering, that you have to make a mention to him. I mean, fan favorite Kubica. Yeah, not
Giga Cube. The person responsible for quite literally 98% of the YouTube live chat, Robert Kubica.
Yes, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's just like he's a fan of everybody's. He's won the Hearts and Minds contest.
I think the Polish have taken over. That's what's happened.
Yeah, and then obviously shout out to the Iron Lynx car and just the pace that one of their WCGT Pro drivers. I was even I want to mention him just to like give more of them credit for that strategy, but Delatraz was fantastic, I think, and especially too with Team WRT. Yes, they are essentially, I would consider them a professional.
Oh, absolutely.
Pseudo kind of almost factory-esque. They're kind of like a Yoast, and yeah. But still to pull him over and to have him sit in that car, run LMP2, and do as well as he did was, I would say, pretty commendable. Although you could definitely make an argument there's like 3 or 4 of these guys who would get driver of the race.
Yeah, I think Delatraz's first stint really set up the race for them. Making that pass on Rusinov and getting away to that lead, that really comfortable lead, kind of let the pressure off. So I think Delatraz would probably be in with a shout for me. And then it's a kind of a toss-up between Lawrence Hoare and, as you made mention, that unnamed Ferrari Pro driver, which we're not going to validate because it's unfair. But yeah, they really just stole the show. I'd probably give it to Lawrence Hoare for that, the first half of the race.
Yeah, building up that huge lead, is impressive. And like you said too, in the single Duquesne, sure, maybe that Duquesne suited the track a little bit better than the other Ligiers, but no, that's quite a momentous task to do that. Especially when you don't kind of, quote unquote, have that support that the other teams do just with the similar chassis too. So, I would say, if we were doing any category, it'd be Lawrence Hoare, but if we were looking at just LMP2, Delatraz for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Some talking points just to finish off the chat about the ELMS. First off, the LMP2 pace. So this is that was the first race run with the doubly adjusted LMP2 pace, the one where it's extra weight and 50 horsepower down. And not, we'll talk a bit more about this in the future, but not the Le Mans spec aero. That has changed, and we'll detail what's going on there in the second part of today's episode. But was it noticeable? Did you really notice that the lack of pace from LMP2? Were the changes, enough for you to actually pick up with your eyes?
I would say if I tried real hard, it would be noticeable, but just in just watching the race itself, not incredibly so. I feel like there was probably some parts where I'm used to seeing, almost on the screen if you're at live or at watching on TV, which I was watching on TV. There's definitely some shots that are just standard shots for the track that I've seen, in previous years, and LP2 go from point A to point B on the screen a little bit quicker. And I'm sure that was probably, there's something in the back of my head that was remembering that, but for the most part, no, it didn't really affect the pace. It didn't really affect in terms of the show that it was put on. It didn't seem like that was the case. And two, I mean, just a slight soapbox. I mean, I that's what I expected.
Here we go.
This to be, I just didn't expect this to be that big of a deal. And the people that were really, really upset at all these changes that were happening because the Le Mans hypercars are getting slowed down. Like, I don't get the angst. I don't get the agitation. And I mean, some of the arguments that were made were like, they were sort of sensible, but at the same time, like, it's definitely potentially pushing on safety. And honestly, them slowing these things down just a little bit it was not going to be that big of a deal unless it was just stuck in your head that these are now slower than cars that have previously raced in other years. Which really then what are you watching for? So this is the wrong series to watch the fastest cars compete around this specific track. Go watch something else.
Yeah. I tend to agree, actually. I can certainly understand the viewpoint from the teams who have done oodles of testing. Like that
Yes.
to have it changed last minute basically just throws that all the window, which is just money just being burnt on a freaking bonfire. But I could not have told you that they were slower than before. Like,
Correct.
yeah.
To that extent, too, though, I mean, what were they expecting as well? If, like, everybody was going, okay, pace-wise, they're going to need to slow the LMP2s down. And we were talking about this. This is, like, over 6 months ago. We were talking
about this when the LMH class was first getting muted. Like, we were talking about this back in 2018.
So, but I do understand the argument that the call was made late. And that obviously for testing and obviously for getting some of these people, some of the drivers up to speed and what to expect, that yes, they did not get this memo until late that, hey, we're making these changes. However, this was talked about, and I think maybe they thought, okay, well, halfway through, or maybe ACO is going to pay for some of this stuff, or like, I don't know what the contention was. Obviously with the bodywork, that was kind of a left field thing for me. I was not expecting them to try to do a mandatory bodywork change. But that kind of, to a certain extent, I get it too. And then, just some of the ripple effects after the round two for just, okay, well, we're not going to continue that for safety reasons. Like some of the stuff that was cited was like, oh, wow, I didn't think about it from a safety aspect, which would maybe lend to another discussion itself. But no, your overall point or question was whether or not I could tell a pace difference. No, I couldn't really tell at all that that they had nerfed the LMP2s, as the kids say.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Next question, LMP2 AM. Did we actually care? Did you think about the LMP2 AM category throughout the race at all?
No.
Yeah.
Well, it would have been a great story. I think and that was the thing too that was going through my head was like, is there anything that could stand these out? I was thinking too between like Bathurst 12-hour, Spot 24. I don't know if like maybe they had like stupid lights or something like that. That was like that was not going to blind drivers or anything like that, but that would like indicate, hey, this is an AM car.
Yeah, so normally in Blank Pane, SRO GT World Challenge, they have different colored number lights. They have the number panel in the front window, so it'll normally be white for the Pro category, and then blue for Pro Am, and red for AM, and black for whatever. I know that, for example, in the Nürburgring, the top 20 qualifiers for the Nürburgring 24 have a flashing blue light, so it's kind of a warning to the slower cars that, hey, we're a fast car. I agree with that. It was very hard to distinguish the an AM car from a non-AM car.
Yeah, and so and to that end, the people that know the differences between one car versus the other car, if they're both on the same track fighting for position, technically for overall position, they're going to definitely know, hey, that's something to be said for that Pro-Am competing with this Pro, which is weird to say Pro, like, because it's not supposed to be like that.
It's not anyway. Pro,
yeah. But, where you have that distinction of, two different driver lineups that could denote an actual conversation, or like, hey, applause to you, sir, that's a really good run. And I think, just something simple like that would at least keep reminding some of the viewers and people, when they start showing up in the stands later on this year, that, hey, look, while they're competing for the same space, real estate on the track, there's the background for these two different driver lineups is something to note as well. And just so that we're paying more attention, or are more, there's more of an impression placed in some of the Pro-Am category entries that are finishing that high up. So like the 5th place for Ultimate is an actual talking point that should be made.
Oh, absolutely.
However, I feel like it should kind of be a lead up where a lot of the fans that are watching do that themselves instead of being reminded, hey, look, this is a Pro-Am car, guys, remember? They should be like, wow, yeah, that was a great run, and did you see how high the Pro-Am's finished, kind of deal. And I think, something like a light change or doing something where you're differentiating, and maybe like the top bowl, like above the windshield, that has to be a specific color or something, or just do something to really identify it.
You just pulled that idea out of my head. That was literally just what I was about to suggest. Get out of my head, Cookie. I'm not okay with this.
I got to do. See, look, I'll have misfires with completely misclassifying the innovation car, but then I'll also just do some mind melding, and you never know what you're going to get with an early morning cookie.
I'm not okay
sure.
with this. We should do less of these. Anyway,
Okay.
I 100% agree. Didn't think about it at all during the race. I only really caught it afterwards, and I was like, "Hey, that ultimate car's pretty high up."
Yeah.
That making some way to signify that either through the graphics on screen, the broadcast graphics, or the car itself, that needs to be looked at, because really, otherwise, it is just a wasted venture, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then it would. We've had some of this stuff before too, where it's like, oh, this is Pro Am Trophy, and people are like, whatever, it's Pro Am Trophy. But if they're impressing, if they're real time impressing you as you're watching the race, there's a lot more acceptability when it comes to, okay, well, here's a Pro Am award ceremony. Like they're finishing. Here's a podium ceremony for Pro Am. Oh, okay, yeah, those guys definitely earned it because they, I know that car, I know where they were running throughout the race because they were being shown on camera with these battles at the front of the field. Yeah, and just as another build off to your point, that was pretty much it. Because it was. I even know too that there was, and when we'd done this before, it was just like, well, why bother with these stuff? It's like, and it's just kind of like it's a servicing affair. It's a participation trophy for Pro Am. It's like, well, I wouldn't really say what Ultimate did was a participation trophy, especially where with the rest of the field that they were absolutely competing with tooth and nail. So they definitely deserve that.
100%. I 100% agree with everything that you've said, and I think that pretty much wraps up the ELMS race. Like, I don't think there was anything else that you can really say about it.
No. I again, it was a great opening round. Was it the most spectacular round I've seen? No, but hey, it was as good as we could get, especially with having no fans in 2021.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take it.
Absolutely. It was steady, and looking at some of the races from some of the other series that I've been tracking, steady is good. Because the last thing you want is a shit show, and there have certainly been some of those this year.
Already, yeah.
100%. On that note, I will just take a quick break in here. You're listening to Endurance Chat. We'll be back in a sec. If you're following plenty of motorsport series like I do, you've probably run into trouble with calendars, time zone conversions, and most importantly, missing the start of racing you want to watch. That's why I use the Racing Line app. The Racing Line is your customizable motorsport calendar, giving you up-to-date schedules on all the racing you care about, with all major motorsport series covered. Use the day or week view to check out what's on and plan for those busy weekends ahead. The Racing Line allows you to set customizable notifications for events, giving you enough time to get yourselves ready for the racing you want to watch, or for me to get the race threads ready. Plus, it's all converted into your local time zone, so there's no getting caught out by bad mental maths or daylight saving changes around the world. Find out more at theracingline.app or search The Racing Line on the iOS store. Thank you to The Racing Line for sponsoring this podcast. And welcome back to Endurance Chat. Still got Austin here with me. Let's talk about the WEC, because we've got our first race this week, Cookie!
Oh boy, here we go. First round. I'm ready.
And the first time, I think, in my watching memory, of a brand new top class. This is the first time I'm ever going to watch a race with a new top class. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, and you're absolutely right. The last one we had was 2013. With
technically,
yeah, 2012. Was it 2012? I don't know. Whatever one that they were they're going full hybrid. I guess that would technically be it, but that would still be LMP1. No, this is brand new. As much as people want to say that GR010 is not a brand new car, it is a brand new car. And although we've got an Alpine that's basically a Rebellion in disguise, LMP1, Oreca, it does feel like there's this new Uncharted, what the hell are they doing? I want my old stuff back kind of thing. But this is with a lot of welcome arms, honestly, because I would rather have this kind of stuff in the future looking much brighter than the other times where we've had low car counts to start off a new category, especially at the overall competing top step for the ACO kind of classes and championships. So I will definitely take this, even though it is light. We'll say that
it's light to start with, and let's talk a little bit about what's been going on with one of the competitors to start with. So we were meant to have by the way, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we are recording this while the prologue is happening, so we will duck into the prologue as we go through this. But we were meant to have at the prologue, alongside the two Toyota Gazoo Racing's GR010s and the grandfathered Alpine Elf Matmut Alpine A480, which is, as Cookie so aptly put it, a Rebellion R13 in disguise. We were meant to have two Glickenhaus SCG007s, but due to a variety of reasons, which I'm sure you can probably guess at home, along being, delays in development and homologation pressures and blah, 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 the Glicks aren't here. There has been a pendulum swing of public opinion because of the delayed Glickenhaus program. Cookie, what's your opinion?
First off, that I think we keep underestimating the aspect of social media and anything, and with everything when it comes to expectations, a year out, a month out, a day out, that kind of thing. So the feedback that you're going to get is very hyperbolic, I want to say, almost, where you're just there's just such extreme reactions to positive news and negative news and interpretations of how this news fits into global news of the specific thing that we're all talking about. So name and point LMH and LMDH, just the back and forth between how terrible one is and how great the other one is. And then literally within days, it completely swings the other way, where that the thing that we were just praising is terrible and the thing that we hated is amazing. So I feel like, if anything, the last 3 years or so has given us a lot of tough skin when it comes to that. So honestly, we've seen this a lot before, even, with the Janetta attempt. We'll just say that. So not saying that there's any equivalency to that, but, I think as race fans, we are used to, these kind of efforts trying to get support, drum up support, and then not deliver. I think still Glickenhaus will be there at Le Mans. And the thing to note for me is that this is a 5-year homologation process. So it's not like that where we have Janetta needs a time crunch to get everything right and get it homologated, for maybe a year or two, and they can still work on stuff, and that there's like this open book of, all right, well, they just need to get on track kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas Glickenhaus and the way that LMH works is that you don't necessarily want to see them on track immediately, because that essentially means that they've locked in their design, they've locked in their strategy in terms of their aero strategy, that kind of thing. So if any time that I've seen in the last 20 years for the overall category for ACO, like LMP1, LMP900, LMP1H, LMH, this is the time where I would be okay with cars not immediately showing up when they're supposed to, because they're still, working out, not necessarily teething issues, but balance issues, pace it, where they're trying to make this so if they are going to get hamstrung and there is going to be BOP involved, that they have the most balanced neutral car that they can present for these next 5 years. And so yeah, I think it's a blow just from a entertainment standpoint and just from a David and Goliath standpoint, because I wouldn't call Alpine David at all in this scenario.
Who are you calling
it's
Alpine?
Unfortunate.
Is Alpine what, Da Vinci or Caesar?
yeah. He's the senator, the local senator that has organized such an event, or battle or whatever between David and Goliath. But yeah, no,
he's the promoter.
And as an American, it's a bummer, because it's been a long time since we have essentially like a Panos American kind of team that showed up and tried their best and whatnot. And I do think that Glickenhaus is going to win a round. So just you guys, you could quote me on that somewhere. I don't care. Okay. I think Glickenhaus.
Someone timestamp it.
Bam! I've done it. I've said it. So yeah, it's a blow, but I don't think it's that big of one. And specifically with all the announcements coming for the other entries that are in the next 2 years. It's going to be something for us to be like, oh, remember that time when there were only 3 LMHs around the grid? So I have more of that feel than anything else at this time with Glickenhaus. But I do think that it's a little bit worrisome that they're not here, especially because it is it's delayed an extra month. But I could tell that they're aiming for their long 36-hour test sometime in May, and so missing the Portimao race is unfortunate too. But it seems like they're wanting to get a lot more of the endurance testing down so that they have a lot of this stuff figured out. So hopefully that's not an issue with the ICE.
Yeah.
Is what they're talking about. But it sounds like in the next couple of weeks that they're supposed to be doing their long endurance 36-hour test or whatever that they said that they were going to be doing too. So
Yeah, I am trying to find that because I do remember seeing that exact quote somewhere from Jim Glick. And I think
I saw it.
Pardon?
I saw it on Twitter. Somebody asked him like, "Hey, when are we expecting that?" Because it was just he posted something on the sub, and then I went to Twitter, and it was just a random question to the video or a photo of like the sisters or something like that with the chassis, and he's like, "We're aiming for like mid-May, second week of May, something like that." It was just a quick fire-off reply. So that's where I saw it at least.
Yeah, okay. So I've seen in one of the Reddit threads that he's commented on, which has been in equal parts awesome to see him and also, oh my god, what is he doing? He said that the endurance test would be mid-April, so that should have happened now, but you know, we haven't seen any news from it. The thing that strikes me is the really sort of bipolar reactions to it. It seems that, you know, we're getting to the size now as a community where people can have diametrically opposed views and only express them when it's appropriate. I was so surprised to see the sheer amount of backlash, and I totally understand that, you know, endurance, we don't want to be hurt again. You know, we've been promised the world with Nissan and that fell to shit, and we were promised the world with SMP and that fell to shit, and we were promised the world with Janetta and that fell to shit, and we just don't want to be hurt again. But something that I said, and I'll reiterate it here, is that a delayed car can still eventually be good. You know, we haven't seen that car on track. We haven't really heard anything about it. We don't know its pace. We don't know any of the LMH's pace at the moment. So, you know, this delayed car, we have no basis for where its pace is going to sit. But if they rush that car, if they try to homologate it before they're absolutely ready for it, it is going to be a heaping, steaming pile of shit for 5 years. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to commit to a pile of shit for 5 years.
Oh, I mean, and to that end, I mean, I know Graham was talking about it too, is that like the Toyotas, when this delay hit, I mean, the Prologue got pushed, and that's really when you get homologated, when you're showing up for the Prologue, like that's the homologation point, and the GR010 was not homologated technically past where the original timestamp date for the Prologue would have been. So they were using that extra month's times to essentially continue working out kinks. If they wanted to change something, they had every right to do so, and they took advantage of that. And sure, you know, Glickenhaus is going beyond the extra time allotted that was given with this schedule change, but it's not like other competitors weren't already doing that anyway. Toyota didn't go, all right, well, we're already done. We're just going to homologate this car and wait another month and just test it for its own homologation. They waited until literally this week to get their car homologated. So,
and as an aside, Peugeot is waiting until next year to homologate their car, and Ferrari's waiting till 2023 to homologate their car.
Yeah, and they said that they want to get their rolling chassis done in Q1 of next year, which is kind of crazy. Q1, Q2, they want to have a rolling chassis, so they have literally, you know, almost a calendar year with Ferrari go by their own schedule to work out kinks and to figure out the ultimate pace of that car. Like that's pretty like crazy to me. I mean, and again with your Peugeot comment too. I mean, this is right. This is not normal when it comes to okay, well they need to step up to compete for this year, and I don't think they're going to win the WEC championship. I'm going to take a guess. They're not going to win it by missing the first 2 rounds. But if this means that they have a much better car to handle BOP and handle the next 5 years as they basically try to run against all the Goliaths that are literally in the automotive world racing right now, more power to them. And I'm just like, I'm holding off the absolute hope that they are not going to fold like these other defunct teams that you've said in the past. And I think that's probably where a lot of this vitriol is coming from, is just that we have literally seen it a lot.
Time and time again, yeah.
5 years. Yeah, we've seen it a lot happen. So it's it's definitely something that I think. And Jim's not the person to be like, oh, well, we understand we understand your concerns, we understand your sympathies, like, whatever. This is literally what I'm doing, so F off.
And we know that he can build a car. We have seen at the Nürburgring that he can build a car. That the SCG 003, that has taken pole at the Nürburgring 24 Hours, and this isn't against, some friggin' VLN scrubs in BMW 3 Series. And by the way, if you do race a BMW 3 Series in the VLN, that is awesome, and I am super, super on board with, like, everything that you're doing. You made the VLN the thing that it is. But, like, he's competing against the absolute peak of GT3 in that country and in that competition. And he's gone and taken a pole position with that car. He's been up the front in, the lead battles in that car. We know he can build a car. So this isn't a fantasy world where, someone's faxing in pictures of their assets to say that they've got enough money to run a team. This is the real deal, and I think people could be a little more lenient. And, like, as a complete aside, I know it's 10 years ago, but Audi turned up at Sebring without their new car in 2011.
Yep.
Yeah,
yep.
Like delays happen, non-homologation events happen, and I think people just need to lay off the blowtorch a bit.
Yeah, 2012, they only had one hybrid of the R18s, and then they raced two just diesel R18s next to the hybrid at Sebring with the opening round for WC as well. So, yeah, I mean, this is not new at all with some of these teams. It's just that I think the scale and size of the team, and also who leads it, lends to a lot of potential backlash from fans that are looking to be impressed or to kind of feel comforted by each of these teams, backing up what they say with, oh, well, we're going to do this thing. Okay, well, we got to, the internal milestone is, well, you show up at the Prologue so that you get tested and whatnot. And a lot, too, of how people look at this is because WC used to do mandates for, you got to be at Prologue in order to show up. I think that was a Janetta thing, too. Yeah. Where they had to be there in order for them to compete at Le Mans. And so this whole standard of, oh, they're not the Prologue, therefore they're not at Le Mans, they're not doing anything, they're done, which is not the case now. But it's that standard that was set even 2-3 years ago, that is kind of coming up, I think, to in fury, I guess, with the Glickenhaus delays, we'll say. But yeah. I'm not really concerned too much at all with this.
Yeah, neither am I. And I think the reaction has not been merited. In my personal opinion, I've done a little bit of work to try and just sort of go like, guys, seriously? For a few people who have been very sort of reacting emotionally without engaging their brain first, and I think that's something that having a very public social media presence has invited.
Yeah, it'll definitely lend to it. I mean, and that's too. Just the last point too is just that we've had a lot of LMH versus LMDH vitriol. God! I mean, it's not been positive, and I think that's the thing that I wish that there was more. There was more authority taken upon with like the ACO and IMSA to just kind of try to cultivate more of this like not standoffish aspect where it just seems like all of the fans are just trying to do like this team thing where everybody, if you're not on team LMDH, then you're the enemy, or vice versa, and it's hang on,
this is beginning to sound like American politics. I don't like this.
Hey, look, I don't know, but it's been a struggle sometimes just to be logging on and reading people's opinions, which I've enjoyed, and I think a lot of people do bring good points to this, but it's exhausting. I mean, for the last like 2 years, it's been like this, and we're still not even a year out. We
haven't even hit base camp. The cars are literally on track for the first time now.
Yeah, and we're still getting comments of like they're so heavy, like I'm not going to watch anymore. And the 3-minute 25-second lap time at Le Mans. It's like, I mean, I please just watch them on track first before we start doing this. It's just there's so much more to be learned, and before we get to Le Mans in 4 months, that it's really going to be. I don't think it's going to be as bad as people are thinking it is. And a lot of it is just so, like I said, hyperbolic, where we're just looking at a little breadcrumb and imagining the whole loaf kind of deal and how bad it's going to look. And it's like, yeah, but that's not it, guys. This is literally what happens on a year-to-year basis back in LMP1, where we didn't know what these changes were going to bring, if they were going to be more reliable or less reliable, or if they're going to be slower, faster, all that stuff. And we know what the targets are. We know what the goals are here. And I don't know. I mean, I think this is going to be pretty exciting just from these are new cars, just to see the Toyota versus quote unquote factory Alpine and what should be reliable versus brand new. Just even, from a talking point of 3 cars, and let alone once we add Glickenhaus and just the 24 hours of Le Mans to this, like, this is one of the more exciting years of WEC in the last, 3 years.
Yeah.
Easy for me.
And
even though there's a very limited car count for it.
And, it's not even limited. Like, we've got 35 cars at Spa. 35! That's bigger than,
With
3 of the last 4 years.
Who I'll also do another little thing. I would not be surprised if that Corvette does the full season of WEC.
I mean, if they're here, if they're here, they might as well, right?
They have literally a European hauler that with Labra, and they also have a bunch of WEC stickers everywhere all over that hauler too. So that would strike me as, why would they do that if they're only doing a couple rounds?
Yeah.
But who knows? So that's what I'm saying. I wouldn't be surprised if somehow the ACO cooks them to stay the whole year, considering what potentially might happen next year. So
yeah, cool. Okay, we'll move on from Glick and LMH, because I think we've talked to that extent enough. Let's just quickly touch on the LMP2 updates again, because there has been some changes since Barcelona. So, one of the stipulations for the LMP2 class globally, ahead of Barcelona, was that they'd all run the Le Mans spec bodywork, for whether that be the Ligier or the Orica or the Dallara or whatever. So they'd all run the Le Mans spec bodywork, which means that you'd end up with 50 cars running Le Mans spec bodywork, and then 50 sets of non-Le Mans spec bodywork, which is just going to sit around. What has happened in the interim is that the Le Mans spec bodywork has been confirmed for the WEC cars only, and the ELMS and Asian Le Mans Series cars can run their non-Le Mans spec bodywork. I think that is a good change from an economic standpoint. Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah, can't argue with me there at all. And I think too, just even the, and again, they were citing safety. Some of the teams in the ELMS were citing safety concerns. I'm going to give them merit that is correct. That There are probably safety concerns with that. But even if they didn't, from an economic standpoint, it made sense just to nix that. Just from how late to the game that was. And just like we said, we knew this 6 months ago that they were going to do slow cars down. The ACO knew this well before 6 months ago, before they announced it. So, it just seemed odd, and that's where I understand some of the anger that some of the fans had towards this decision that was made so late in the in the 11th hour, so late in the game, that it was just, even from an economic standpoint, and we're still still dealing with this pandemic where we're not getting these stellar revenues for all of these teams to just have to automatically come up with this new bodywork that some of them aren't planning on ever running. I mean, some of them aren't going to go unless they get those invites, which again, it's like, some of these cars, not everybody's going to get an LMP2. So some of them definitely are not planning on it. They're going to hold on to this this low downforce bodywork, for a long time if they, weren't planning on using it. Now all of a sudden it's a requirement for them. So, from just an economic standpoint, I'm fine with that. But as well from a safety standpoint for the LMS too, considering there's a lot more AMs in that field.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think great work. ACO's listened to the teams and done the right thing. Good on them. Let's talk about Spa. Let's talk about this week and this weekend, because it is the first time that Spa-Francorchamps, the 6 hours of Spa, hasn't been the curtain raiser for Le Mans in my WEC watching memory. I can't, So
it's always been.
It has always been, yeah. So this is going to be a very interesting sort of lead into Le Mans. We've got the Prologue at Spa as well. We've made mention of it. It's happening right now. We might have mentioned that. This is the first time that the Prologue's been at Spa. It's normally either at Paul Ricard or at Monza, so a different looking sort of track for the Prologue. How do you think that will affect teams in their lead up to Le Mans? They will have... After Spa, they'll have Portimao and Monza, and then Le Mans in late August. Is it going to affect teams too much?
I would say it's going to be a change for the teams. Are we going to see certain teams rise, to the top for the first round Portimao because of this, or would it affect it? I don't know. This doesn't really, to me, give a good indication of how you would go about setting up Portimao versus Spa. Spa to me is more low downforce. It's more akin to Le Mans. or even Monza per se.
I still think that's a lie. I think it's a high downforce track connected by straights, but potato tomato.
Fair enough. The amount of data though that you can accrue over the entire prologue is for high-speed corners might not be as much as you would potentially find other places. Again, where you're, and I think this is more or less in terms of like the Toyotas, or if Glickenhaus showed up, or just some new car to the Corvette per se, where that they're getting more data for the long straights that I think that they would need for setting themselves up for a decent Le Mans test day, which again is truncated and the week before Le Mans. So a lot of the stuff that you might be bringing there or to data collect and test for, you're not going to be able to just immediately take that back and soak on it for a week or two before getting ready to go to Le Mans. You're going to have to immediately know, hey, this is good, or no, this is bad. This is our next option. This is our plan B. So I think Spa gives them the ability to do that better than a Paul Ricard, even with its long back straight. But yeah, I don't really see that this affecting too many of the entries, just because a lot of the entries we've seen already. So that they're not new. They're not. We don't have a ton of newcomers into the WC field this year as much as I think I've seen in past years as well, especially with the new MP2s. So.
Yeah, and the real new ones are the new class, obviously, and teams that have raced in ELMS before and have probably raced at Spa before, so that it's not so new that it's brand new for most of these teams. Not all. For some it is brand new, and we'll talk a little bit about that now, seeing as we'll catch up on the entry list. But for most teams, it's not brand new. So we're going to go through the entry list in a little bit of depth, not heaps of depth, because if you checked out our podcast, I think it was 2 episodes ago now, where Ollie and I talked through the 24 Hours of Le Mans invites, and we sort of went through the full season Le Mans entries in that as well, so you can catch up on that one. We'll just go through the recent changes and anything that really jumps out at us across the field. So, we've got, of course, it's for this week, the 3 LMH cars. We'll talk a bit more about that when we talk about what's happening at the Prologue. I really want to delve into the LMP2 field, because 14 cars in LMP2, that is an awesome field. And we've got our absolute stalwarts in there. We've got United Autosports, we've got Yoda Sports returning, Racing Team Netherlands are back, WRT are stepping in as well, Yoda Sports with 2 cars, ARC Bratislava are back for the first time in a while, Inter Europol are in the WEC for the first time in ages. There's high class racing returning, Richard Mille stepping up, G Drive. There's a lot to get through here. What are you most excited about looking at that the WEC entry list, which I'm just about to link you now in case you don't have it in front of you?
Oh, I've got it in front of me, man.
Of course you've got it in front of you.
I would definitely. G-Drive stands out, and Team WRT, especially now, having seen what they were able to do in the first round of ELMS. I think I was already of the opinion that they were going to be right up there at the top regardless. And Team WRT did not disappoint with their first round of ELMS by winning it. So to me, it would definitely be like, hey, a nod to that, at least for their setup and how that they are tailoring their cars to Pro and AMs that they bring in. That will be a car that, even though it's a fantastic lineup, it doesn't stand out to me as like the best lineup. G-Drive themselves have a very, very good lineup, as would, I guess, to be expected. And that, I would say Joda too, is a very, very fun lineup for me to look at.
Yes.
I think Joda would stand out to me, if anything. Otherwise, it would just be the still stellar driver lineups that we keep finding in these LMP2 fields. That feel way more like Pro than AMs.
Yes.
That's for damn sure.
Yeah, so just to close off the loop there that you're talking through, WRT are racing with an entirely different lineup to their ELMS car. So instead of having Yifei Ye and Robert Kubica and Louis Delatraz, they have Robin Freins, Ferdinand Habsburg, which we saw in the Asian Le Mans series doing some very good work, and Charles Malesi. Now, you might not remember that name, Charles Malesi. He raced for Graf at the Le Mans 24 Hours last year. 19-year-old silver driver. I think it's an F4 graduate, a German and French F4 graduate. And he did a stellar job in that car. So I am very excited to see his work in the WRT car. The G-Drive cars you mentioned, same as the ELMS, Rusinov, Colapinto, Nick de Vries, very, very scary. And Yoda Sport, you would have seen this car at the Asian Le Mans Series. Sean Galale, who, when he wasn't spinning the car, was doing some incredibly good work in that British Racing Green Feet KFC machine, alongside Stoffel Van Dorn and Tom Blomqvist. Do you reckon they're the three scariest lineups in that field?
Yeah, that was what was standing out to me.
Yeah.
Definitely that Jota has got some bangers in their lineup. for both cars, you can make an argument.
Yeah, the second car is what has been the former Dragon Speed car from last year, the Roberto Gonzalez, Antonio Felix da Costa, and Anthony Davison machine, or the second Jota car. Yeah, so really good lineup there as well.
Yeah, and yeah, we get the Pro-Am thing again, which I would like to see WC do the same thing that ELMS where we suggested there too, just making some differentiation between them, because they are promoting it like they're two different classes, even though they are the same class and using the same machinery. But yeah, I just the at least this first round, and I know for the full season that there's a few of these that are just I think Spa entries only, I believe, unless that's changed. But that this is still like a fantastic 14 cars in LMP2. I think in no matter the driver lineups, I think it is going to be a very exciting race to watch. And then also particularly because of the very, very narrow pace difference that we're supposedly supposed to be seeing from the LMHs versus the LMP2s, depending on what happens with these three entries that we have in front of these 14 cars in LMP2, these could be overall podium and overall top step battles that we're going to be seeing from LMP2 as well. So it'll be interesting, really, to see how this shakes out for the first round.
We will get to that. Very interesting things are happening at the Prologue at the moment. Just a few quick loops to close off. Final updates to the entry list. John Falb in the second of the G-Drive cars, the Pro-Am car, because of course John Falb is a bronze, is being joined by Rui Andrade and Roberto Meri. So that kind of closes the TBAs next to his name. I want to just quickly touch on the Dane train, the high-class racing number 20 machine. We saw during the week an announcement about their Le Mans lineup. Here's their just normal WEC lineup. Jan Magnussen alongside the duo that we come to know very well, Anders Fjordbach and Dennis Anderson. But for Le Mans, they will be getting a brand new driver in the form of Kevin Magnussen, driving alongside his father, and I'm pretty sure it's Anders Fjordbach, for a full-on effort. That is pretty cool. It is cool that the Danish sort of tradition at Le Mans lives on in this new class.
Yeah, and I think too, a lot of this I think they'll be fighting definitely at the top step for the WC calendar. At Le Mans, though, that's going to be a crazy good lineup. It remains to be seen how Kevin will adapt, from DPI to LMP2. Although I would say it's going to be pretty straightforward and simple. He performed very admirably at Daytona, and was also very, very good at Sebring as well. Didn't seem like he lost any amount of step or time, jumping between machinery. So I don't think that should be a problem either way. But the addition of another Dane into that Dane train is great, because Jan is a fantastic, fantastic driver. And he will have to prove to me that he's lost a step, because I don't think he's lost any. He's done this before too, way earlier in his career. He was a prolific prototype driver, and shades of Alan McNish in terms of just his early stints pace, as well as just ballsy overtakes, and just really, really challenging drivers that were ahead of him to defend well, or else they would lose to him. So I look forward to seeing what he can do behind High Class Racing's LMP2 Eureka.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see high-class racing in the LMP2 class. For everything you've said about Jan, and it's great to see Jan back behind the wheel of a serious contender. It's good to see that they've got that Danish crew together. Remember, they were trying to get that together for last year's Le Mans, but it didn't quite go through. But yeah, high-class racing and Jan and Kevin in the same car is going to be an absolute... It's just going to be a fun time. I'm keen to see it. All the other usual names are in that LMP2 class. Richard Mille, as I made mention, step up. Juan Pablo Montoya in for a full season drive at Dragon Speed. Racing Team Netherlands has the usual suspects, Job van Uitert now in that car alongside Van der Garde and Fran Erd. Inter Europol. Now, this is an interesting driver lineup for Inter Europol, stepping up from the ELMS, where they were formerly in Elysia, now in an Orica. Jakob Smykowski joined by Renger van der Zande and Alex Brundle. Now, isn't that just a change in expertise?
Yeah, it definitely switched a bit from what Interpol was racing before in ELMS. And yeah, that is Renger. I would say is I don't want to say like underappreciated, but he slipped below the radar in a lot of people's levels. I think like just because he's had these drives that are just like beyond impressive, but then he's had bad luck, or it's just been something where you're like, okay, well, the storylines go to somewhere else. But really, I mean, we should be giving more credit to Renger and how he's been driving the last 2 years. He's been unbelievable in IMSA, at least for me.
Absolutely, I reckon he's been the best DPI driver. I don't think I will lose too many people in saying that, which is why it's been so surprising that he got dropped from the Cadillac team. Or Wayne Taylor. Yeah, when Wayne Taylor moved to Acura. Yeah.
And I think that they were chomping at more prolific stars in their cars, which, again, is almost a discredit to Renger, because he's made himself
a star.
He's made himself a star, and he's put his name on the map in terms of IMSA, and at least for this watcher of IMSA racing, like, whoever, and especially switching essentially disciplines in terms of like how, or in just the team composition and just how he goes about every week. He's done a lot of changes through the DPI iteration too, and has really come out on top every single time. And it's that we haven't seen him kind of have these really bad off days where he's banging into things, causing a bunch of trouble. It's been basically him putting his head down and really impressing. And so that's what I'm looking forward to see the same thing. And maybe this is the time now that he can go like, yep, this is like, I am this anchor that you're finding these cars where I'm driving in, finishing way higher on the running order than you would expect. And I'm expecting this now from him. I think this is where we finally start seeing some slight expectations in him potentially even exceeding those two here in WC.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I want to see the best from him, and I feel like we've still got that ahead of us.
And I want to see Alex Brundle win LMP2 as well. Yeah. I think he's I want him to have some good warm fuzzies when he eventually takes over for Martin Brundle in the F1 commentary booth. So you can be like, hey, remember Le Mans? This is a cool thing.
Can you imagine them commentating together?
It's the same cadence.
It's the same voice.
Creepy. It's creepy. It's like, I mean, sometimes you see that transfer over from like, son to father, that kind of thing, but like that it's
uncanny.
The thing, because it sounds like younger Martin, and it's not like I'm trying to make it sound like that. It's like it straight up sounds like Martin, except 30 years younger. It's just uncanny.
On that note, we'll leave LMP2 there. GTE Pro, we've talked about quite a fair bit. The addition of Corvette Racing is pretty cool. Antonio Garcia and Oliver Gavin joining that team for the race this weekend. Let's just close off the loops in GTM, because I do want to talk about the Prologue quickly before we close up. The Team Project 1 car, which had the question marks around it, they've been fielded now. Next to Dennis Olsen is Anders Burkhardt and Axel Jeffries. So Axel Jeffries, I think we saw at the Asian Le Mans series in the GPX car, I think. But Anders Burkhardt, another driver from Norway, so two Norwegians in the same car. That's a bit cozy. I've not really heard too much about Anders Burkhardt before, so I don't really have any strong feelings about him being there. But I'm sure our friend Norwegian Petrolhead has very strong feelings.
Oh, those Norwegians always do.
Brilliant. Some of the other cars that we've seen. By the way, if you haven't yet seen, I'm going to plug this now because I think it's worth looking at. Graham Goodwin's YouTube channel, it is just Graham Goodwin. He did a track, like a paddock walk yesterday, just before the Prologue, and the new liveries, like across the field, but specifically in GTEM, look like fire. They are so good, and it's going to be a very colourful and very cool looking grid.
Yeah, that's also the thing I was going to say as well. Like,
sorry for stealing that.
Well, they know that's fine. They've been extremely on point. And even the you can even tell from the overhead like Prologue WC family shots and stuff like that they're doing that it's like lots of color and from all the spectrum. So thank God that people aren't sticking with the mandated ACO color scheme or FIA color scheme. So
Yeah.
yeah, even in the GTE field, which usually is also pretty close to the mandate as well, finally seeing a little bit of yellow back with the in those GTE cars. So.
Yeah, they look very pretty, so I'm very excited. No real other big surprises in the GTE class, in the GTEM class in terms of entry list. Nothing that we didn't cover off in our entry list podcast, so you can have, pardon me, a listen back on that. I think the only thing that is of note at the moment is the 88 Dempsey Proton has been filled finally as well. So you have now Andrew Harrianto alongside Marco Seafried. Cool to see Seafried back in the WC. And Alessio Piccarello. So that's filled that car finally. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure everything was very well noted. 13 cars in GTEM as well. That's going to be an absolute dogfight. Can you remember the days, Cookie? Maybe this speaks to a bit of the change in health of the WEC Pro categories. But remember when GTEM was 6 cars and everyone kind of forgot about it and no one cared?
Right, and we were kind of. I think people were also. I don't know if people were making crazy comments in terms of like, oh, this is catering too much to factory efforts and whatnot. But you know, like where it was, there really was nowhere to fill them. That this was kind of like that GTM was kind of on the back foot because there was LMP1 and you had GT Pro and you had like 12, 13, 14 entries
and then
GT Pro.
And then you only had like 7 LMP2 cars, and then the rest was like, we have 4 slots left, I think.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, and so it was kind of like, you know, this is the juxtaposition between the lack of GTE Pro. It just seems like, yeah, we're gonna have around 20 entries for GTE cars. We'll see where it goes from Pro entries. So
yeah.
I'm very, very pleased to see this level of and even entries for GTM, and even with some of the extra that did not make even for Le Mans. There's a few extra GTEs that are trying to bang on the door to try to get in to Le Mans as well. So I think just with the health of the actual championship for WEC and for Le Mans itself, like we're seeing where GTE still has a presence to be felt in endurance racing, even though it is going away stateside.
Yeah, maybe, which is a bit of a shame, but well. I really hope that GT sticks around because it is cool, and the GTM cars, the GTM teams have shown a lot of faith in the WEC and in the ACO in investing in this, and I hope they get rewarded. I hope they get rewarded because it has shown some great quality when they get the opportunity to take center stage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So let's talk briefly about the prologue so far. We're about an hour into the second session of the day. The first session started off pretty cool, but ended with three red flags through the sessions, 2 pretty hefty shunts at Eau Rouge and Raidillon, both for TF Sport Aston Martins, both at the same spot. So Ben Keating monstering the front of his blue Aston Martin the first time around. Then it was Satoshi Hoshino who followed him in there after the red flag. But interestingly, both drivers are okay, by the way, and I think the 777 Aston Martin was a little bit better off than Keating's example. But the very interesting thing for me is that the session was topped by LMP2 cars.
Yeah, and mightily so. I mean, the top 7 were all LMP2 cars, with the first hypercar being the number 8 Toyota. Of note, too, the number 7 just had installation laps, and that was it. Pretty much just a couple runs around the track and then immediately back in for box at the end of that lap. So really didn't get a whole lot out of that, and that might be too that this might be Toyota's first time running 2 of those cars in unison together. Noted too that they usually only do one for testing and or for the prologue, where they're just doing one car out at a time. But still, that's just something to note that usually when we're seeing these, especially for the prologues in the years past, obviously with Toyota bringing their own tried and true tested chassis, that this is the first time that we're really not seeing them, trying to log as much laps and data as possible. They're really just making sure stuff works first. But yeah, the pace between the first Le Mans hypercar, and the top leading LMP2 is basically 2 seconds after the first session. So, which is pretty crazy to me. I did not think it was going to be that much of a gap. And also Alpine, with their grandfather LMP1, was 2.5 seconds. They're about 0.7 off of Toyota. So I kind of expected more or less to see Toyotas in this realm, but I didn't really expect to see the Alpine, the R13 really, or the A480 hypercar finish that far down, at least in the first session too. Again, might be just insulation from them wanting to get more of a handle and understanding of the car and its new restrictions, and what kind of balance change that does to the overall performance of the car. So I hope to see the other sessions later today where we're seeing more of a pace from those cars. But yeah, very, very surprising that it wasn't like, okay, LMP2 did take overall, but it was Toyota right behind them. But Toyota were quite a bit of ways off of where I think their ultimate pace is going to be lying, but also where like that there was that many LMP2s that were in front of them too, which is
they finished the session in 8th.
And basically 2 seconds off the pace.
Have you been keeping track of the times in this session while we've been doing this?
I have not, no.
So I've got the timing screen in front of me now. This is 2 hours and 47 minutes remaining in the session. Does that sound right? Yes, it is. So this is a 4-hour session late in the day. At the moment, well, I'll tell you the story first. We did have an LMH on top. We did have an LMH leading the field for a while, and it was the Toyota Gazoo Racing GR010 number 8 with a 2:05.8 initially. That time has been eclipsed, and it has been by Team WRT in the LMP2 car. So when you were talking about earlier, talking about LMP2 and the strength in LMP2 and, whether or not we might be seeing these cars fight for overall podiums, we might be seeing these LMP2 cars fighting for overall wins. Now, I know that this is just the second session of the LMH cars in their current form, and it's the first time they've been out on track. But they're mighty close. If they've still got pace to find, they better find it quick.
Yeah, and that's and again that Team WRT setting that 2:05.043 is not even the fastest lap so far the weekend, which is a week, which is 2:04.968 from the 22 United Autosports. And that was in the first morning session. So that's technically not the fastest lap so far recorded. That was LMP2s are ducking the 2:04s, the high 2:04s. So really, they've got to find just even a little bit more pace just to beat them. And that's considering Alpine and Toyota. Just from if we just talk about the class LMH, if they're not competing overall, it's just a funny thing to say.
We might have to. We might have to. That might be. We might be in a situation wherein we have two competing top classes, and it's LMH versus LMP2.
Right.
I mean, okay, so we're joking about this at the moment in terms of outright pace, but remember, the LMP2 cars will have AM drivers in these cars as well, so there will be a pace differential at some point. But still, this is mighty surprising.
Right, and that's where if you have any hiccups, you have any issues, something you make contact on track, like these pro teams, I'll count for LMH or pro teams, they'll be able to bounce back a lot quicker. But the margin for error here is almost nil because you don't have the ability to really outperform and use the pace advantage that you have in your class or chassis manufacturer to really essentially build up some padding in order to have some issues, whether that be just like I said, teething issues from the new car for Toyota, or just bad luck circumstances on track, or just human error issues where you have contact, something like that. So, and again, if we have a virtual safety car, if we have something that doesn't go their way, it could absolutely swing back in favor to LMP2s, and all they have to do is just ride the storm out. Even if they're getting chased out by LMHs, the pace is so similar, as far as we could tell now from these first two sessions, that they could theoretically, just do almost what WRT did, and if they have a lead, they could at least keep that until the end of the race, and that is not out of the question, at least from what we're seeing from the pace now.
Yeah, it's kind of terrifying to think that we could have quite literally a Le Mans 2017 all over again, but with an LMP2 winning. Yeah,
and I would rather it be that than I don't know. I mean, it just kind of
Then
it brings more
2016.
intrigue to the class. Yeah, that's
I
wasn't
had
gonna
to. I
say
couldn't.
it,
I
but
couldn't stop
yeah.
myself. Interesting to note that people who have been watching timing a bit more astutely than myself have noted that the LMP2 cars are much quicker in Sector 2, which at Spa-Francorchamps is the run from Le Com, the entry to Le Com, all the way through to Stavelot. So that's the twisty-turny section of the track. Versus the longer straights in sectors 1 and 3, where you've got, the run through Eau Rouge and the Camel Straight in sector 1, and then Curb Paul Fier, Blanchimont, and the bus stop chicane in sector 3. Do you think that's in part the downforce limit coming to the fore? Is that something that we're going to potentially see on the tighter, twistier, more aerodynamic focused tracks, the LMP2 cars having a bit more of an advantage?
Yes, and no. I know that they. Now, forgive me. Is the LMP2 low drag bodywork going into effect for the Prologue too, for WC?
I would assume so.
Yeah, because some of the pictures that I was looking at, I mean, it looks like those are the low drag, but on some of them it's hard to tell. So I'm not entirely sure, but that's what I think. So, which is more surprising to me, even if that's the case, that they are running their low drag configurations and still being able to pull up those pretty decent sector times for what I would consider to be higher downforce areas of the track. So I wonder if it's maybe the added weight too is affecting the LMHs, even with their their, I would say, their higher aero efficiencies, even in the higher downforce areas as well, just because of like weight shift or balance stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is surprising to hear that the LMP2s are gaining that time in Sector 2, because that's usually where we see that higher downforce play a lot more of a factor than in the the first sector or the third sector. So yeah, I mean, I'm almost kind of like a wait and see and see kind of where everything lies from the initial days here in the prologue, just to figure stuff out. Because yeah, that was not what I would assume. If you're going to tell me LMP2s are going to finish top of the timing sheets, I would have thought because of those long straights in sector 1 and 3, that's where they're making their time. But that is really surprising to see that they're kind of owning sector 2.
Yeah, it is.
So I'm not sure.
I'm confused and a little intrigued by that as well. But that's what's been the report so far. Otherwise, there's been a few other little, pardon me, things that have been happening in the prologue in in session 2 at the moment. Firstly, a big off. Oh, sorry, a red flag for two simultaneous incidents. One was Anders Burkhardt going off into the gravel. That car hasn't returned to the track yet. That's the number 46 Team Project 1 machine. The other more significant issue was that Sean Galale in the Yoda Sport number 28 machine hit the wall pretty hard at Eau Rouge. So that car is unlikely to take any further part in the day's running. We talked at length of Galale's, let's say, yo-yo season in the Asian Le Mans series. He's been incredibly quick, but also quite a nightmare for his mechanics. And it seems like he hasn't quite got the handle on that car just yet.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate too. It seems like he drives very much on the limit, which is not a bad thing, especially when it's a cutthroat world out in open wheel and the Formula One feeder series. You kind of almost have to make your name on doing that, and really pushing the cars and making mistakes is part of the game. But with endurance racing, it's a whole other set of wheels, a whole different kettle, just because there's I don't want to say budgets is a thing, but I mean the team's on tighter budgets, and every little thing that goes through the weekend makes a difference. So if you have it clean, free practice, all your free practice sessions are clean, your qualifying's clean, and maybe the pace isn't there, but the team itself gelling, the drivers and all that, it provokes more of potential pace, and that you don't have these issues that come up, which absolutely can help you overall in the race, as an X factor. And I feel like too, it's a definite brain switch between you are your almost biggest enemy in open wheel versus you're driving the environment, you're driving the track, you're driving the cars and drivers around you. more so sometimes than you are just driving with your, driving for your ultimate pace yourself. And, even if you can put a little bit more on the table, it's about making sure that the team has all of their ducks in a row and they have their ultimate pace set. And then that's up for you maybe throughout the race to work on and get better with that pace, where you can kind of add to the mix instead of subtracting. And it just seems like Galeo hasn't figured that out yet, especially even with driving two different disciplines. And don't get me wrong, that's got to be crazy tough. But at the same time, he's being brought on as this kind of switchover, this talent switchover from the open wheel sector into endurance racing, and he certainly has the pace to do so. But it's, there's a mental switch that you have to make too for these categories, and a lot of it is, with the team in mind, not necessarily with
the individual,
your ultimate pace. Yeah.
It's kind of a similar discussion that we had when Alonso made the jump from Formula One to WEC. How much of that focus on the individual is transferable into focusing on the team, because it's certainly more of the team. And I think even in the Age Le Mans series, he was the individual in that group. I mean, he drove 3 hours at Abu Dhabi, the second race around, and it was a mental stint, but he pulled it off and it was incredible. But I think for a WEC effort, it does need to be a little bit more concern in the team. Well, just before we finish off the show, Cookie, we have Graham Goodwin, of course, Mr. Daily Sports Car, posing a question in our discussion channel for the prologue. He says, what scenario is currently happening at the top of timing? Is it A, all three hypercars have problems, B, all three are trying to gain the balance of performance, or C, the balance of performance is broken? What do you reckon, Cookie?
Well, thanks for the question. I appreciate it. I would say out the gate, B or C is more likely. B being probably more likely than C, but again, just for how these BOP tables are going out based on what we've seen, I guess from the data that I would assume the FI collected, even from the Michelin testing for their tires, and then in terms of probably what they got and gathered from Toyotas, if anything, it could definitely be BOP tables need to be adjusted, and we would definitely see that. However, I would not put it past like somebody like Toyota, especially with them only really running that number 8 in both sessions so far, as far as I could tell, that they are really kind of, they could be doing a whole lot more in terms of running their cars a lot to try to get as much data as they can. There's a limiting factor for sure with Toyota where we're really only seeing data from one car. And then the Alpine, they definitely increased their pace, but however, I mean, that isn't a unproven car. It's only unproven with the new restrictions that they've placed on it. So that's tough. I would say, man, it's a toss between B or C. I don't think that there's problems with maybe there's a problem with the number 7, which is why they're not running it. But I'm thinking B or C.
So I'm just going to quickly, while we're here, I'm just going to quickly go and have a look at the Rebellion R13's fastest lap from last year's 6 hours of Spa, which, remember, they would have had some success ballast on as well. And that Rebellion was capable of lapping in the 1 minute 59 sort of bracket. So that's a significant drop off, and it seems to be all in Sector 2. And that's the thing at the moment. It's 2 seconds in Sector 2. So with that in mind, who wins in 4 days' time? Or 5 days' time, or whenever. Remember, the race is a Saturday.
I'm gonna go with homeboy and my fanboy Toyota call on it. I'll say number 8 just because they seem to have more testing done, but it could definitely be number 7. I'm gonna go number 8 just because if Graham is, if anything from what Graham's saying, if any of that is accurate or true, A would be difficult to fix if it isn't, there's just they're keeping it slower because they're worried about reliability, so that might be tough to overcome. B would be easy because they're gaming the BOP, and C would be that BOP is slightly off, so they're going to get adjusted for it, so they should be a little bit higher up the grid than the LMP2s, and they got pro lineups, so I would still have to give the nod to Toyota, but I mean, just from what we're seeing at the prologue, is a little bit, I wouldn't say concerning, but it's rubbing hands together sneakily or slyly kind of thing with when it comes to LMP2s. This might be a lot closer than I think I was thinking, and I already was thinking it was going to be close. 2-second pace difference between LMP2 and hypercar coming into it, at least the estimations, was going to be a lot closer than I think anybody is going to think about in their head, because that's, you know, that's almost just like, that's like almost better than Bicole's pace, you know, where you would see in the first lap, Bicole's would be a straightaway behind for the first lap. LMP2s are going to be pretty close to the hypercars after one lap. So that's going to be strange to see after one ultimate lap at Spa, to see them kind of coming out of the chicane as the hypercars are coming into turn one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I would still say number 8. I'll go number 2 at GR010.
Cool. I am going to say the WRT number 31.
Oh god, here we go.
Yeah, we're going straight off the deep end.
There we go.
Look,
wow, you just disrespect to Alpine. Oh.
I mean, yeah. Well, see, this is the thing. Gigi said in one of his paddock notes that the Alpine ran in 2021 spec against a 2020 spec P2 car, and it was consistently 2 to 3 seconds a lap slower. I can't remember off the top of my head what track this was at, but this is like, the Alpine is entirely hamstrung. The fact that it is currently leading the Toyota in class at the moment is actually a significant surprise to me. The fact that while we're recording this, we're seeing the P2 cars top the sessions, I can see the ACO's concern around the P2 class and while they continued to slow it down, or rather saw the need to slow it further at the ELMS, ahead of the ELMS race. So with that in mind, I'm just gonna, you know, throw the baby out with the bathwater and say that the number 31 is gonna win.
Why not? It would be a great start to their season.
Yeah, and you know, a debut victory in the LMS and a debut victory in WEC. Like, that would be, whoa, look at that.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's you know, if that comes off as correct, I'll be a god. If not, well, I shot for the moon and landed amongst the memes. What about in GT? Where are we looking in GT?
GT, as much as I would love to see Corvette win in GT Pro, I'm going to lean with Porsche. I really like that. I really like the number 17 lineup, specifically just from what I think that they can ultimately put in pace, and from the first two, at least from the current running, and then from the first morning test session for the Prologue, they have been doing pretty darn well. I think the number 17 led the Prologue.
Number 17?
This morning. Or, sorry, not 92. I was looking at the actual overall standing.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, they finished 17th overall.
Yep.
In their first test session, the number 92 team. But yeah, I think they're definitely one to watch, and they're currently leading, I think, the current test session too. So I'm going to go with number 92, the Porsche, for GTE Pro. And for GTM, I almost want to go Iron Lynx, but I'm not going to.
Do it. Do it.
I'm going to go Dempsey Proton.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, that's boring and correct, but yeah, I agree.
Yep. I'm going to go number 88.
88? Whoa.
Yep, because you just said boring and incorrect. So instead of going number 77, which is sensible, I'm going to go number 88.
Okay, so you're just going to throw the baby out with the bathwater as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. Even though
that's probably not, yeah, it's either that or I go AF Corsa, and both of those are really boring. So I was just going to go.
Yeah.
I could go to Aston Martin, but I didn't want to. So.
Well, I mean, half the Aston Martins are in the wall at the moment, so you could go, you know.
That's true.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, it's hard to go past the Porsches at the moment. What's going on with the Ferraris? The Ferraris are still there or thereabouts. They're you know, a whole 2/10 away from the top of the Porsches. And keep in mind, this is just testing, so we don't know. We actually don't know anything. We are just pulling numbers out of our asses here. But of the GTM runners specifically, I'd go to say the 98 Aston Martin, the Northwest Racing, and Dempsey Proton are the ones for me at this stage. And we shall see come Saturday. Remember, it is Saturday that the race is on, and if you forget, make sure you pick up your Racing Line app so that way you can set notifications to remind you that it is Saturday. Because the last thing you want is to turn up halfway through Sunday and realized that the race was a day ago.
That's definitely never happened to me. No, sir. No, sirree. Not anymore with the new app.
Yes, thank you very much to the Racing Line for all their sponsorship work for us. Also around the sub today, we've got the discussion thread on the Prologue. Hopefully this podcast will be actually up for you to listen to while the second day of the Prologue is running. That's what I'm going to endeavor to achieve. We will have qualifying thread, practice thread, and race thread as per usual. Jump into our Discord for all the live action. Also going on, MW Clarkson's Fantasy Endurance. Check that out. That's linked in the Mondays at the Mulsanne thread at the moment. You can also go to mwclarkson.co.uk to jump in on that. Awesome competition. It's basically like a fantasy league, but for WEC. You get a certain budget. You got to pick a car in each class. A great way if you're just getting into the WEC to follow the separate classes, because you'll be invested in each of the classes, quite literally. And at the end of the year, the winner gets a prize. So, like, what more could you ask for? And it's free to enter as well. So get in on that. We're very happy with how that's gone in the past. If you are planning on watching this weekend, make sure that you're either signed up to Eurosport or Velocity Discovery in the States or Motor Trend in the States or on the app. And if you're not in the States, because I think that's still geo-blocked, and make sure you get it sorted out early, because the app is notorious for being a bit shit with processing payments and all that. So if you're listening right now who's planning on buying the app, do it right now, right at the end of this podcast, so that way come Saturday, because remember it's Saturday, you can be there and watching the race, and you'll be watching the race with all of us. So I can't wait to have you with us. Austin, thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
Hope you enjoy your...
watching me this morning.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you enjoy your day at work immediately coming up.
Oh, hey, this makes the week go by a little bit quicker, so we can get to that first round WEC Saturday.
Oh my god, first round of the WEC! I'm so excited. I'm falling off my chair. I just want to also say thank you to Ollie for providing us with some numbers during the week, and for Lada doing great work with our graphics, and we'll touch a bit more on that maybe next time we're on Endurance Chat. We'll see what happens. And finally, thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. Hope to see you all in the race threads this weekend. Until then, I've been Michael Zalavari. Thank you for joining us. Peace out!
GRO10 Gazoo! We're gonna do well this time and not finish behind L2.
Oh, I gotta get in my presenting. I gotta get in my presenting posture. Hang on a sec. Oh, just stretch it out. Oh, yeah, here we go.
Jesus Christ! I don't know if you might have stretched too hard.